So, a show of hands, how many knew what happened 10 months ago? Wow, just about most of you. Okay. How many of you knew Dustin? Like actually knew him and talked to him and, okay, a good amount. A lot of you that didn't know Dustin, because he graduated, he would have graduated last year. And he kind of pulled himself away from the church when he got into the drug scene, which is common. And that was probably I think his sophomore year in high school was his last time really kind of coming and being involved in the youth. But he grew up in this church, probably like many of you. He was like pretty much born into this church and baptized and involved in youth, hugely involved in youth until he got into the drugs. How many of you are familiar with the drugs that are out there? And don't be shy. I mean, we're not judging. There's no judgment here. I mean, you know, because it's probably around you all the time. It's in schools. It's everywhere. And that's the problem that we're dealing with. I was a parent who thought, okay, I've homeschooled my children until they got to high school. They grew up in the church. They were involved in activities, I mean, wrestling, basketball. Daniel was gymnastics. I mean, so many things. I kept them involved, mainly because I was worried about their social life because I was homeschooling. And got them into church, and they were in youth group, and had no earthly idea that drugs would find my family. You know, I mean, I did not grow up in any kind of a drug family at all. My mom was very strict. I was probably the rebellious kid and did stuff because she was so strict. None of those are in here, right? None of you guys are rebellious and not do what your parents tell you to? Yeah, okay. Anyway, so I tell people I was one of those that had her head in the sand. Both my husband and I, our heads were in the sand. We didn't think, how could any of our children be involved in drugs? Addiction is kind of there's a lot of bad connotations with addiction, but I don't think people understand it very well. I didn't until it happened in my family. My husband understood it because he had addiction in his family. His father was an alcoholic, and his sister actually died of a drug overdose. Dustin you were 4, so I think Dustin was 7 when she died. So, I mean, it had been a while, but Dustin remembers it and kind of thought, you know, hopefully for a good positive thing that would have put a thought in their heads, you know, don't do drugs because you can die. Even at 7, I was hoping that was kind of going to be something that would stick in his head. So my husband was very familiar with addiction. How many of you are familiar with addiction? Like you kind of know about it, you heard it, you know kind of what it is. Okay, and that's a lot of people's hands that are up. So that tells you how prevalent addiction is in our society. It is not genetic. So you probably heard, how many have heard that addiction is genetic? You can get it from your parents, your grandparents, whatever. That's wrong. It's not a disease. How many of you heard that addiction is a disease? Everybody should raise your hand if you know what addiction is. I mean, that's like the whole thing. That's what addiction is. It's a disease. It is not a disease, you guys. Not at all. A disease is something that can be treated medically. Addiction can't be treated medically. Addiction starts because you have a disease or a condition, depression, anxiety, those kind of things. And you choose, and I hate to use the word choose, but you do. You choose your alcohol or your drugs to kind of help numb the pain that you're feeling from anxiety, depression, or whatever it is that you're dealing with. Now those things are genetic. You can get depression from your parents, you can get depression from your grandparents, whatever. We think that Dustin did get depression, and I'm not sure how that happened. Who knows? Nobody knows. He was never tested for it until later on. But it did show that he had depression, and we didn't know it. He was really good at hiding anything that made us think that he was battling something. Again, he was homeschooled. He didn't have to deal with the bullying or, you know, and that was my whole purpose for homeschooling. I didn't want my kids to be bullied, and the drugs bullied them. And I totally didn't even think that could happen. You can go ahead and put the next slide on. So do y'all know what those things are? Raise your hand if you've seen them. The top left, what is that? Vaping. Oh, vaping. It's the big craze now, right? Everybody's seen it in their schools, probably maybe even in their jobs, around their neighborhood, maybe even here at church. It's a big deal, you guys. And it's a bad thing. And they're advertising that vaping, is a lot safer than cigarettes. I don't believe that. I don't believe it for 1 minute. Anything you put into your body that's chemical, it's not good. Flat out, it's not good. And I'm just waiting for the day that the vapes, the juices, all that, whatever that stuff you put in a vape, when it will be laced. Because you can lace anything with stuff that, the fentanyl. Y'all ever heard of fentanyl? That's what Dustin died of. Not the drugs. He didn't die of the drugs he was on. He died of fentanyl because the drug that he took was laced and he didn't know it. I'm just waiting for that to be laced, and it's coming. I know it. Of course, you have alcohol. That's always been an issue for young people and old people. The bottom left is your pot. That's still common. It was common in my day. It was common in my mom's day. I mean, it's been around for years and years and years. The problem with today's pot is it's not like it was, I'm not even gonna say how many years ago, but back in my day, it's not like it was back then. Back then, it was the actual stuff that was grown. There was nothing put into it. Nowadays, it's synthetic. It's chemical induced. It's not grown. Unless you yourself have grown your pot in your house, don't smoke it. I mean, it's not gonna be natural. It's not, I can't get over, and the only reason why I know the difference is because Dustin had pot in his backpack. And I was like, what the heck is that smell? It's nasty. And when I pulled it out, I was like, I knew what it was, but I told my husband, I go, this isn't what I smelled, years ago. I was like, this is not the stuff that I know of. And this is not the stuff that I know even 20 years ago was natural. And it's not, because it's synthetic, and it's bad for you. I mean, even the natural stuff can be bad for you, obviously, too. We're not going to talk about that. That can be a long discussion. That'll be another topic. The bottom right, prescription pill bottle, okay? Dustin started out with alcohol, and he told me at the age of 12 is when he had his first drink. 12. How many in here are 12? You're 12 years old, right? Yeah. I can't even fathom having a taste of alcohol at 12. I don't know, maybe some of y'all's parents let you have a taste just to see if to kind of keep you from not liking it. And most people, I would say 99.9% of people that have maybe tried alcohol at 12 or even 13 or maybe 14, you don't like it. No, it's gross, right? I mean, that's an adult taste. Even I like wine. I'll admit I like wine, okay? Jesus drank wine, right? I'm just kidding. I'm not advocating wine. I'm just kidding. But as far as, I remember when I was a kid, my dad let me have a taste of his, I think it was a strawberry daiquiri or something. And even that was gross to me, because you could taste, it wasn't the virgin daiquiris that I was used to drinking as a kid. It was nice and sweet and strawberry. This had something in it, and it was gross. So alcohol at the age of 12, Dustin said he liked it. And that's when he said, Mom, I knew something was wrong with me when I liked it. And I thought, holy cow, how do you like alcohol at 12? It's nasty. And then he said, I even liked it more because it numbed what I was feeling inside. So there we start with that whole process. The addiction started. I do believe that not everybody is keen to addiction. I think that there is, I like to call it like a switch in your brain. Everybody's brain is chemically made up differently. We all know this from biology and chemistry and stuff. But everybody's body and brain are made up differently, and that's what makes us all so unique and special. Some people's brains, because of the depression or anxiety or whatever it is that you're battling, can be more prone to addiction than others. In my college years, if I was going to be having an addictive brain, I probably would be an addict by now. But I wasn't, because I didn't have that chemical in my brain. So my thought to all of you guys and to people that I talk to, parents, kids, is why even try it if you don't know if your brain is a chemical makeup to make you addict? Why even try it? Why take that Russian roulette, right? Because I'm telling you, once you go down that path of addiction, it's very, very difficult, and it's very rare to come out of it. Justin's a perfect example. Go ahead and go to the next screen. So 1 in 6 teenagers admit to taking prescription drugs. I'm not going to ask who all's done that. I don't want to know all that. But I think that's higher. That was actually a slide from, I think, 2015. So it's probably a lot higher, because it's so easy to get your drugs, your prescription drugs, from your medicine cabinet. We had the hydrocodone from when I had surgery years ago, and I never got rid of it, and I just didn't think to get rid of it. And that was something that Dustin got his hands on. I did an article for the New York Times, and I've been emailing this guy that did the article for me, that interviewed me, and he kept asking me about Dustin with the prescription drugs. And I'm like, I told him, I said, get off the prescription drugs, because that's not the problem. Prescription drugs is not the problem anymore, guys. It's what you get on the streets. Prescription drugs is never going to be laced with fentanyl. It's never going to be laced with whatever the carfentanil, all that other deadly stuff out there. Because your prescription drugs are prescription. They're from a pharmacist. Pharmacists don't lace things. They make them legally how you have to have them. So I want people to realize that it's not the prescription drugs that's the problem. It's the street drugs. And what happens is your dealers, they get a prescription drug, they get a Xanax, or they get a Percocet. They can buy pill molds online, which totally buffoons me, but you get a pill mold from Amazon.com or eBay or whatever, and you take your Percocet, and you got one Percocet, you can melt it down, and then you can add all kinds of stuff to it. You can add your fentanyl, you can add another prescription drug to it, whatever, and now you have 2 pills made from one. What does that mean? Cha-ching, right? More money. You doubled your money. That's what the dealers on the street look at. They don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care that, you might die. They could give a crap. They care about their money. And that's all it means to them. Next slide. Okay, what kind of drugs are considered depressants? We all have heard of opioids. Okay, fentanyl is an opioid. Fentanyl is not a bad drug when it's prescribed the way it's supposed to be prescribed. And I feel bad for fentanyl, it's got a bad rap. But it's because it's a very, very potent drug. Your dealers use fentanyl because it's very, very addictive, more addictive than heroin. At first they were putting the fentanyl in just heroin, because heroin was the most addictive drug. Now they've decided, oh, wait a minute, fentanyl is even more addictive, so why don't we mix the two? That's fun. And that's what they were doing. And now they're like, well, wait a minute. Some people don't like heroin. Some people don't do heroin. Some people do Xanax. Or some people just do Percocet. Or some people do meth. So we need to put fentanyl and all that stuff so we can get them to come back and keep buying and buying and buying. That's your drug dealer's mentality. Are y'all listening to me? That's your drug dealer's mentality. And they don't care about you or anybody else. They don't care. There's your Xanax. I thought this slide was interesting because the bottom slides, you have your real Xanax and you have your fake Xanax. Now tell me, if you didn't have those side by side, if someone gave you a fake Xanax, you could tell the difference. I don't think you could. I know I couldn't. Now the fake is when it's made on the street. Like it's got maybe some Xanax in there, but it's probably got some other stuff in there too, and you don't know what it is. One of Justin's friends who was in rehab with him died November 2006, my days are all mixed up, 2016. He took one Xanax. Now that's called a bar. Those 4 little Xanaxes that are all together, that's called a bar. If some of you know some of the drug terms, it's called a bar. Parents who are here, I'm telling you, get to know your drug words. Okay, when I got on Dustin's phone, I saw the word bar, and I'm like, oh, a bar? He's going to go drink somewhere at a bar? I don't know what that is. there's like hundreds, and I'm talking hundreds of words that stand for different drugs and different things. Heroin's got, oh my gosh, I don't even remember how many heroin has, but they have quite a bit. So I Googled the list, and it's too long to print, but you might want to go ahead and print it and just have it with you. And get into your kids' phones. And kids, I'm telling you, I'm not telling you this so that your parents can snoop around. I would trust every single one of you, even though I don't know you, but I would think I could trust every one of you. But that's not the issue. Trust isn't the issue. It's trying to save your life is the issue, okay? Life is precious, you guys know that. You get one shot. When it's gone, it's gone. Methamphetamines, that was Dustin's drug of choice. He went from alcohol to pot, and then from pot to prescription drugs, because he could get those pretty easy. And then from the prescription drugs, he found meth. Do y'all know what meth is? Raise your hand if you don't really know that much about meth. That's kind of scary. Meth is a stimulant, which means it's opposite from your opioids, okay? It gets you hyper and it gets you going. Why Dustin chose that, I'm not really sure. He never really told me why he liked meth, but he chose meth because it was easy to get. It's made on the street. You cannot ask a pharmacist for meth. He'd probably look at you and call 911. So you cannot get meth from a pharmacist. It's literally made on the street. So if anybody offers you, hey, I got this stuff, it's called meth, got it from my grandma's cupboard, you know he's lying. Stay away, tell him to get out. But we found out that Dustin would take his meth because it got him hyper and got him in a good mood, and then when he got too much, he would go and take Xanax, which is a depressant. So his body was constantly up and down, going from a high to a low, from a high to a low. Typically you take your depressants, your Xanax, your opioids, because you're trying to numb whatever pain you're dealing with. You take your stimulants because you just are so tired and you gotta test the next day, or you gotta, go do workouts for football, baseball, so whatever your choice of sport is, and you gotta have the energy, so you take a stimulant. So I just urge you guys, I don't care if it's from your medicine cabinet or if it's not, just stay away. It's not worth your life. All right, next one. We kind of talked briefly about this. What is meth? It gets your bodies going. It's called poor man's cocaine. Y'all know what cocaine is. That's a stimulant. They call it poor man's cocaine because it's cheaper than cocaine. All right, the opioid statistics. I think this is old too because more people are dying from it quicker. Before I go any further, does anybody have any questions about what I've just said about meth or stimulants or depressants or, yes?
I'm wondering if more people are really dying, it's because of social networking that we know about it more.
Good question. I think it's a little bit of both. But I'm sorry, he said he wonders if, with more people dying, if it's really more people are dying or if we just hear about it more because of social media. So, and that's a great question. And I think personally it's a little bit of both. I think social media is a great thing when it's used positively. And I have a slide on that, so we're gonna talk about it a little bit more later. But you guys have to be careful on social media because it can be a very dangerous thing, and we found that out through Dustin. And we'll talk about that in a second. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There's your fentanyl. You see the penny? Okay, that white stuff, that's fentanyl. That's a deadly dose of fentanyl. That is about 3 milligrams. You know how much killed my son? 0.5 macrograms. Who's science guru knows what a macrogram is? Because I didn't, I had to look it up. Yeah, see, nobody knows what a macrogram is. A macrogram is actually 1,000th of a milligram. You know what a milligram is, right? It's pretty small. You can't even see it with your naked eye. So do you think you can see 1,000th of it? No. The coroner said the equivalent to what Dustin died from, that amount, was 3 grains of salt. That's how much killed my 180-pound child. How many here weigh 180 or more? Okay, not many. So think about that, y'all. That stuff up top, that is fentanyl, but it's called gray fentanyl, or gray death. They call it gray death. How many have heard of that? Gray death. That was kind of something that came on the scene probably 2 years ago. Fentanyl just came on the scene about 2 years ago, and it's just come at a rapid rate. So that kind of goes back to your question about, is it really a lot more people are dying, or if it's social media? With fentanyl, it's just coming so quickly. You can get fentanyl, in case y'all want to know, you can write this down. You can get fentanyl through China. If y'all want to call China and order some fentanyl, you can get it in North Korea, South Korea, Mexico, just south of us. So if you don't want to call China or Korea because it might cost your parents a good amount of it on your cell phone bill, go down to Mexico and get it. It's crazy. You can get it. It's so easy to get. They initially said that it was being brought over in blocks, like blocks of cement, because you can't detect it in a block of cement. Grady?
Why does it exist if it so little kills you?
Perfect question. I was waiting for someone to ask that, because that's something that is asked every time I speak somewhere, someone asks that. Exactly. Why would a drug dealer, I think is kind of what you're asking, want to lace something with fentanyl if it's going to kill somebody, right?
Or why would anybody even invent it?
Well, it was invented for pain. Fentanyl is a prescription, it's a prescription painkiller. They used it a long time ago for women who gave birth, because it was extremely potent to kill the pain before the epidurals and all that stuff. It usually comes in a patch form, and people with chronic back pain, they still give it to people with chronic back pain. They put it in a patch form so it absorbs through the skin. So it's not an analgesic, it's a painkiller. So I mean, it has its uses, and it's good. Just like any drug that is prescription that a pharmacy makes, it has its uses, it has its good uses. The problem is you got these jerks out there that are taking these good things and making it bad because they want to make a buck. And what I was saying, what I thought you were asking is, why would somebody want to lace a drug if they know it's going to kill somebody? Because doesn't that kill their clientele, right? Wouldn't you think that? I'm glad I asked that question, because I'll tell you why. Because, again, they don't care. And I'm going to tell you this right now with what the officer told me. With Dustin, he was 180 pounds, and he was about 5'10". How old was your brother? 5'10", 5'11"? Yeah. He wasn't a big kid, okay? He was a great-looking kid. Some of you who know him know that he was a good-looking kid. I got pictures of him. But he was not a big kid. And the officer who came and spoke at our church when we did a workshop back in September, he said it's kind of like, you know, when you are prescribed a medicine, you prescribed either 5 milligrams or maybe 10 milligrams. The doctor prescribes you medicine based on your weight and your height and your body type, your body chemical. So with Dustin, because that 3 grains of salt killed him, it doesn't mean it would kill somebody who's 250 pounds. It might not. But do you think drug dealers are going to sit there and go, this won't kill 180 pounds, so we'll just put just a little depth? I mean, they don't care. They don't care. And you know what? They know that if someone dies from their stuff, there's hundreds more out there that'll come back and get it. And it doesn't matter. Their clientele is never ending. And that's where I'm trying to get you young people to not even let them know that you could be a client. Because it's deadly. Any more questions? Okay. This slide is one of my favorites. It shows that's a heroin, the deadly dose of heroin, what they consider a lethal dose. The fentanyl is right next to it. That's the same deadly dose as the heroin. You see why fentanyl is so much more potent, and why they would put the fentanyl in something versus heroin. Okay, next slide. Social media. We all know it, we all have it. I just beg you guys to be very, 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 very careful with social media. At your age, it's so easy to just put whatever you think out there, whatever you're feeling. You know, my girlfriend broke up with me. What am I going to do? I can't live anymore. He won't talk to me. I mean, you're putting all this stuff out there for everybody to read. And people are prowling. There's dealers out there prowling on these social media sites. They see someone put something out there, you know, oh, I'm so depressed, I failed my test, or my parents are going to kill me, whatever. They can easily send you a message. Hey, dude, I know what you feel, man. I feel the same way. You know, if you're interested, I'd love to talk to you about it. And then you're like, oh, wow, that'd be awesome. Someone I can talk to. Start messaging back and forth. Next thing you know, he or she wants to meet with you to, you know, just be buddies, be friends. And then boom, you meet him. He's got something that might make you happy. And then what happens? You could be dead. Yeah. So just be careful what you put out there on social media. That's all I have to say. The investigator said he's got 4 kids. He said if he could find a way to make it a law that nobody should have a phone until they're 16 when they're driving, because that's when it's most important, so that when you can, you know, if you get in trouble, you can text or call your parents. That would be the only way that he would let his kids have a phone, is when they're 16, because you don't need it when you're younger. I mean, you're not driving anywhere, right? And the person you're riding with is an adult, hopefully, or a person who is of driving age, hopefully, and they have a phone, right? So why would you need one? But that's not going to happen, not in today's world. There's my boy. That's Dustin. That was taken in Louisiana, his second rehab that he went to. That was in 2016. He was very good at football. He loved, football was his favorite sport. But because, like I said, he was only 180 and 5'10", 5'11", wasn't a big kid for football. Nobody wanted to recruit him. So he had to give that up and play baseball. And that was him in high school baseball. He was always number 19. I always wore the 19 on my neck for him. And Dawson is now number 19, carries on the tradition. That was Dustin at age 12 when he started drinking. I put that up there so you guys can see how young he is, okay? And that's all of his buddies that he played football with, and they're all 12. But he was always smiling and always happy. This is his first rehab, and it was local, it was in Cumming. The 2 guys on the bottom, they're both dead. And yeah, so Dustin and the 2 guys on the bottom were gone. They were, the bottom right, that was Alex. He shot himself. He was clean. We thought he was clean, and he kind of went to a sober living after his rehab. And he obviously was too depressed, and he shot himself. And the guy on the bottom left, he was actually a Georgia Tech science student. He had a great career ahead of him, and he overdosed. And then, of course, there's Dustin. The other slide right there, that was in rehab. Dustin's favorite thing to do, he would call me every time they would go. They would take the guys down to downtown Atlanta and feed all the homeless people. And while everybody else was out giving bag lunches to different, homeless people, Dustin would seek out one person so that he could actually sit and converse with that one person. And every time he would go back, if he couldn't find that one person again, he'd find one more person. He'd go buy a pack of cigarettes and give them to him and just talk for hours to this one person. That was the kind of kid that Dustin was. That one gets me. The one of me and him. That was a mother-son retreat. That was his first rehab. It was in October of No, I'm sorry, that was when he went back to the same rehab that he had been in. Because he went to rehab initially November 1st of 2015. And he didn't do that great, so we took him out February of 2016 and took him to Louisiana. That was a very, very hard transition. And he came back, and he came back much better. But then he relapsed again while he was at home in September of 2016. And so we decided to put him back into the rehab that he was at initially. And y'all, for 6 months, he was clean. I still have his 6-month chip. And that was the retreat that we went on, and best time ever. That my son was back. It was the Dustin that I remembered. Y'all, addiction kills the family. It destroys everything, and it destroys everybody and every relationship. We didn't have a relationship for probably a year and a half while he was in rehab because I was so angry at him, and he was angry at himself. And Greg never really had a relationship with them. Not really sure why. He was always so hard on Dustin, and Dustin just didn't like that. So Dustin kind of turned away from his dad. But thankfully, the last year of his life, they got very, very close. And this has been very hard on Greg because he missed all those years. That's his sister, and of course Dawson. And something that Dustin loved to do was fish. Funny story is, I believe he fully loved to fish. But when I asked him about it, it was probably a month before he died. He said something like, "Oh, I don't like fishing." And I'm like, "What do you mean you don't like fishing? You love to fish. You go all the time." He's like, "Yeah, I just go for my friends." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? So you've gone all these years for your friends?" But that was Dustin. I mean, I really think he did like to fish, but he just didn't want to admit it. And next slide. That was 2 weeks before his death. He died on May 26th, and that was May 12th. That was prom. His girlfriend Cameron, who went to West Forsyth, she was a senior as well, and he took her to her prom because he wasn't going to have a prom because he had gotten his GED and was ready to move on in his life. It's one of my favorite pictures. That was taken the very next day, Mother's Day, which was May 13th. And that was 13 days before he died. And that's the last picture I have of him. And so I have that picture. It's all over my office at work. It's on my computer. It's on my phone. It's in our house. Next slide. This was really cool. This was in November. We went home for Thanksgiving. One thing unless you've experienced grief like this, you don't want to, that first year, you don't want to be at home. And so Thanksgiving wasn't an exception. So we went home, we went down to Clearwater, Florida, and we brought some of Dustin's ashes so we could spread it there on Deneen Causeway, which is the last place that he was at with the whole family. And that was just like 2 years prior to that. And there were these ladies in a little kayak, and they took this picture of us we were doing the ashes, and then we set off one of those Chinese lanterns. And she sent that to my daughter. She saw my daughter on the shore. She goes, "I took a really cool picture if you want me to send it to you," which I thought was really neat. That was a moment we would have never gotten, and this lady took this picture, a total stranger. And that was his thing from his memorial service. To the right, when you go into rehab, or at least the rehab he went into, they make all the guys write their own eulogy, which is pretty powerful. And Dustin had to write his own eulogy, and it was read. What he wrote was read at his memorial service. I don't know if y'all can read it, but I'll try to get through it and read it for you. He said, "Dustin was caring and was willing to, thank you, give a lot just to make others happy. He had aspirations to do the things he wanted and accomplish those things through his struggles. He was transformed at a young age and chased God throughout his life." And when I read that, I thought, wow, it's exactly what he did. That is fentanyl, a lot of it. And if you read the bag, it says anything can be laced with fentanyl. And it's true. It has come to surface that anything can be laced with fentanyl. Pot can be laced with fentanyl. It's just a matter of how they can figure out how to do it. I mean, they're making it in their basements and in their garages because it's not the real stuff that you grow anymore, so they can lace it. Anything can be laced, y'all. I beg you all, just don't even try it because it's not worth it. You see what we're going through. You see what Dawson goes through. He lost a sibling, he lost his brother. And it's not easy. And it never will be. We'll always have that hole in our heart. That was taken the day of prom at our subdivision. He didn't know I took that picture. He was being goofy like he always does. And it's one of my favorite ones because it shows his personality. But I'm trying to start a nonprofit called Mission Recovery because there's really nothing out there for anybody under 18 to get help. I spoke at the men's group here back in January and I come to find out, I also realized there's no, like they have a bunch of Alcoholics Anonymous, your AA, your CA meetings, but you have to be 18 or older. They don't have anything for kids that are 18 and younger. So that's another thing that I kind of want to try to do too. But I appreciate y'all listening. This is a very hard topic, but it is something that needs to get out there and it needs to be brought to everybody's attention. And I think it needs to be spoken even in your homes. Don't, if your parents ask you questions, don't get mad at them. They love you and they just care about you and they don't want you to go through anything like this. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. We appreciate it. Yeah, like she said, you guys, the ultimate reason why your parents ask questions and why we want to educate y'all on this stuff is because we care for you. And that's the ultimate reason behind all of this and why she shares this story, and it's tough. It's because we care for you and you guys know the fears and what can happen and what kind of damage it can cause. And so if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have someone or you know someone in your life who is struggling with these types of situations, please know that you can always come talk to me, to Jen, your other Fusion counselors. Lisa will be here this evening. Feel free to grab her after and just, if you need to talk, she would be happy to do that. Again, this is all because we love you guys. And so now I'm going to invite the band to come back up, and I'm going to say a little prayer before we close out our time together.